What's up, everyone? We're back. Finally, it's been quite a while. Welcome to the Thursday night Showdown show right here on Rotogrinders. I'm Justin Carlucci with Toe Tag and Tambo, and Devin is our producer tonight. Shout out to Devin. Thanks for all that you do. What's up, Tambo? Good to see you're not caught in a snowstorm or anything today. How's it going, man?
I'm feeling good, man. Good to be back. It's, I asked Devin before we get on here, how long has it been? I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks. So, it's an interesting game tonight. I'm excited for this slate. Been really grinding Showdown a lot lately. We haven't been doing these shows, but the Monday nights, we've had all these one-off 2-gamers, etc., that we're going through. So really been focusing, honing in on that, trying to get a little bit better at it. Had a few close calls these last couple outings. So, Head Chopper and I still been doing the Sunday show, but I'm excited to get back here with you. And, a lot of guys in the chat are talking already about ownerships and what this game's going to look like. I got my own thoughts, but how do you see this game shaking down tonight? I know we got the Rams slight favorites. We got sort of a 43.5, 44 type total. Where are you at with this game, just broad scheme out of the gate?
Theoretically, you think it would be a grind. And if 2020 hasn't been crazy enough, last week, I think for me, solidified that there was just some things you can go out on a limb and predict, but there was a couple of particular games where you're like, what the hell just happened? New England absolutely destroying the Chargers. Here we are. Cam Newton had under 100 passing yards, and they put up 45 points. Shut them out. Shut out Herbert and Eckler and this group of talented players. I didn't see that coming, Then you have Mahomes and the Chiefs. Didn't score a touchdown for 2.5 quarters against Denver. Didn't see that coming. Then you have the Giants make Seattle look pedestrian. And then, the Steelers lose to the team without a name. So when you think you have a grasp on how a game's going to go and you're working on one particular game, and not only are you worrying about game script, but where the toucher is going to go, then you bring in the Rams, right? So we have like this 3-headed horse throughout the year at running back, and you have 2 very volume-oriented receivers. So my initial thought is this game, I think, would be a grind. We know New England doesn't want to pass the ball, quite simply because they don't have the personnel to. They don't have the receivers. Cam Newton, can't sling it like he used to. So they want to keep this game on the ground. They want to keep the clock moving. And Jared Goff has been pretty under the radar, pretty good the last calendar month, right? So I think there's a chance for that play-action game to start going. And I think, that could cause some trouble for New England if ultimately the Rams could get out in front. So I think it's going to be more of a grind. It's a lower total. They want to use Damian Harris, in my opinion. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I just have a feeling, I don't know, like I said, it's just sort of my thoughts going into it. We'll talk about how we're getting around constructing rosters for Showdown. Everything will go into that. But I actually would take the over in this game. I think a lot. It's not just because everybody's on the under. I saw like 74% of the money. I don't just fade the public for that reason. My thoughts are that, this is a situation where people keep talking about, the rematch of the Super Bowl a couple of years ago or whatever, and they shut Goff down and all this stuff. I agree. New England defense is still legit. But I think that both of these teams are going to be able to put up some sort of points in this game. And if we get one of these situations where we have that Thursday Night Island game where you get a little bit more back and forth, I don't think it's going to be some 60-point game that we see here. I'm not saying that. But when the total is only 43.5, I definitely think that total could be exceeded. And I think a lot of people are thinking about, kickers, defenses, all this and what they're expecting to see. I normally gauge off some of my buddies too. My buddy texted me today, said Cam Newton's going to get sacked 15 times. Well, the total sacks in the whole game was like 3.5 for the prop, both sides. I was like, well, bet the over on that then, because, it's not necessarily what I see. I see a lot of these guys, like you said, they can run the ball. They can move it that way. I know these pass catchers, the names are bad, but people can still catch the ball. These defenses are good. Rams D is legit. The Patriots D is legit. But at the same time, the quarterbacks, it's Newton, it's Goff. They've shown up at times. It just depends on which ones we get tonight. I think the bigger decision will be coming down to running back. Both sides are notorious for flipping through their running backs. That's why this slate feels a little bit gross to everybody. There's a bunch of different running backs you can use on either side, 2 teams we normally steer clear of when it comes to that. And then the fact that the obvious of the pass catchers for the Rams in Woods and Kupp, where all the ownership is there, right? 60+% ownership. You're going to pull it up here now. If you go under wide receiver, you'll see these guys are running 62, 68% as far as ownership goes. So got to find a way to get unique. I think leaving some money on the table tonight is a great idea. Lots of options where you could just take a guy like Cup and then slide him down to a Reynolds or a Van Jefferson and just leave all that money on the table and just hope that that goes your way instead of using that, all this salary in a spot like that where you're going to be duped anyway.
Make a lot of good points. I don't hate the overcall. I think it could go over, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be a shootout. But yeah, obviously Cup or Woods, and the New England defense has been pretty stingy. I don't know if they're as good as people are making them out to be. I kind of have that feeling as if it was a couple of weeks ago and everybody's touting the Colts as the best defense in the league, and then Aaron Rodgers shreds them, then Tannehill shreds them. So I don't know. They're solid. They're stingy. I think they can be scored on though, and a lot of Goff's success does revolve around, can the run game get going? Are the linebackers and corners going to bite on some play action? Goff's been pretty good, so I do think they're going to have a couple opportunities to take a couple shots. Stephon Gilmore's been back, and some other notes and things like that. Like you said, it feels gross on the New England side. I think for me, what stands out this year is that Cam Newton has completely really diminished James White's role in this offense. Kind of almost like the Taysom Hill effect that he's having on Alvin Kamara. When's the last time we've gotten a chance to talk about Alvin Kamara on any slate? He's not seeing any targets. A couple weeks ago when James White had double-digit fantasy points, he had 2 rushing touchdowns on like a handful of carries at most. When's the last time James White had a multi-rush touchdown game? So right. I don't know. I know I see a lot of love for James White and some lineups. I don't know if this is a game for him. They want to use Damian Harris. Michelle had a lot of action last week for his standards. Finally, second game back from injury, 10 carries. The game was a complete blowout, though. So I almost feel like maybe they were pumping the brakes on some wear and tear on Damian Harris's tires a little bit there.
Yeah.
And because the prior week when he came back, he had what? He played like 2 snaps. So I'm a little concerned. I don't mind mixing Michelle in. I'm just a little concerned. Like I feel like Damian Harris has kind of completely earned the trust of everybody in this organization. Harris, who are just the thumpers and are pretty much worthless catching the ball, or you have James White, who you don't want running, inside the tackles. So it's kind of tough to, is that why they're kind of the pass catching role for any of the, there's none of that on the New England side, other than, James White's role just isn't what it was, Tambo.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me that stands out with everything you just said is just like, big game James could be a thing today. Like I get that the ownership's there. One of the things that stands out, I guess, was that the Sony Michel, everyone's already caught on to that. The ownership shows it. I think he's at 2%. It's pretty clear the reason he was in the game last week because it was 45. They were leading up to 45-0 to shut them out, get the game over with, move it on. But the biggest thing that stands out is, going to quarterback for a second is Cam Newton. It's a little bit of a different scenario here. Like I don't really feel like I'm using him tonight as a quarterback. I feel more like I'm using him as a running back. And that's sort of the thing that has hindered Damian Harris, right? So if you think that they're going to run the ball a lot, as you mentioned earlier, I think that, using both of those guys, it's kind of up in your chances. It looks pretty clear that the Pats do want to use Harris, in early on in that game and plenty of times, but the tilt comes from when they get down to the 5-yard line and then Cam just fakes it to him and hogs it. Cam's always been a ball hog. Is what It is, man. That's his thing. The Superman, pull it apart, and that's what he does. That's just what you got to deal with. But I just don't think that's something you can go against tonight because, like you said, with no Burkhead, I like James White in sort of the pass script, right? If you've got the Rams winning and you want to see where it's going to have, passing it down to guys like I like Myers, I like White. You can use those guys with Cam and have them checking it down, or you could run out a 4-man Rams side and then have those as your guys that are coming back because now Cam has to check it down to a guy like James White more often, or he has to look for Myers, who I still think is their alpha, their biggest guy there that they can utilize. So, it's just dependent on how you're building your lineup. But I know that, looking at captain ownerships, which if you go to Eric Beimfor's article, under the premium stuff. You guys aren't premium members. I know producer Devin's going to throw it there in the chat. You're able to check it all out. You guys can get on here and see this article each week, or each showdown slate, I should say. He's got stuff on there, and he's got sort of like the projected captain ownership. And this is the other interesting point, is that normally you see a night like tonight, all this salary to spend. We'll get to Demir Bird later. We'll get to these plays at the bottom, but you've got all this salary to spend. So what typically happens is you see quarterbacks get thrown into the captain slot. But again, a lot more information out there, a lot of stuff on Rotogrinders, other different websites out there that you can check out and see this information. But then you also have the conversation we had earlier around these wide receivers in Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp, where these guys are getting such strong ownership that we know or can project in the flex, in just saying the flex spot, that we know they're still going to utilize in the captains. We know that wide receivers and captains have been a better off situation overall long-term right now, as far as the sample size we have to go off of goes in the captain slot, because on a site like this with full point PPR, the bonuses, everything that goes with it, that goes a long way, and you see it used more often. So it's actually interesting that Cam Newton and Goff are projected the highest owned captains, but by like 1 to 2%, and right on their tail is Kupp and Woods. So I don't think it's that crazy. And when I'm putting Cam in the captain, I'm thinking about it like a Patriots win lineup. And I'm also thinking about Cam as more of a running back than a quarterback. That's just kind of the upside there, the extra. I agree with the chat. It's Cam that sucks, not the others. I'll just say it point blank. We haven't seen enough out of him to see something good, where I can say he's looked good with the Pats, but they got what they paid for. They certainly didn't pay very much for this guy, and they're getting what they paid for out of Cam Newton. So if you're using him, I'm looking for those rushing touchdowns. I'm hoping that's what happens in those lineups. And if it doesn't, then those lineups were dead anyways.
Good point. So what you're saying is the margin in ownership isn't enough for you to kind of disregard a quarterback at captain tonight in terms of leverage and like GPPs?
I'm saying especially with Cam, using the Cam scenario. And the reason I use it and bring it up, just one quick last note on it, we'll move on, is if you go to the other night, a lot of people are comparing this game to the Ravens game the other night. That's sort of how I'm looking at it, in a sense of Lamar Jackson there. The only difference was, look at Lamar, same situation. You had the Duvernay is cheap. You've got Demir Bird cheap. You had all these situations that are so similar. And I'm just saying it's not the same, because what was, I think in the $33 the other night, I'll put a few in that. My majority's in the $15, right? I'm loading up MME on a slate like this, especially. But I think in the $33, just using that, he was like 43%. 30%, 32% or something in the $15. This was Lamar in captain the other night. I'm just personally not seeing that tonight. Maybe it's higher than the estimated, 15 to 18%, but I don't see him being 30 to 40%. That's Cam Newton now I'm talking about in the captain tonight. So I don't think that it's that crazy to have some of them in the captain and just use it for that game script and go from there.
No, yeah, great point. Good points. And it is a different situation for sure. But yeah, in Eric's article, by the way, great stuff every week. He'll point out where the real leverage opportunities are, what builds are looking, what's been optimal, and where you can really get leverage in terms of, 4-2, 3-3 or 5-1, and things like that. Like you said, if we could just go over to the running backs here on the Rams side, McVay has burned us before. Earlier in the year, Cam Akers was barely playing, if at all. Darrell Henderson had a couple of big weeks, and Malcolm Brown had a couple of big weeks. Last week, we saw Cam Akers get 63% of the snaps. Darrell Henderson did get hurt in the middle of the game. Nothing crazy. Three-headed monster. Is McVay going to finally, rely on this rookie running back who, a lot of the advanced metrics loved and missed tackles and PFF grades and wherever you look, Cam Akers, has popped at some point in some metric here. Do you have a lean on, what's going on with the Rams backfield?
I'll tell you where I'm at. I'm underweight on Akers. I'm overweight on Henderson with, a couple sprinkles of Brown, but I think Brown is kind of like our Sony Michel here, but I'll tell you why, because here's the deal, right? This is, again, we're only a couple days removed. Normally it's at least Monday. We got that extra game here with Wednesday afternoon. What was it? Wednesday afternoon football? Am I losing my mind here? Today's Thursday. That was yesterday? No.
Right. Today's Thursday.
Yeah, but when was I'm losing my mind, because the Ravens game was what I was thinking about, but that was like, it feels like it was yesterday, but No, it's Tuesday afternoon football. So anyway, back on track here. All I'm trying to say is I'm very, alive here, but I'm just trying to make this right. So what I was going to say is that there's a couple tweets came out since then. This is what people saw, right? All the snap share says it's Akers now. Can't believe this. Late in the season, this is him. And boom, we got a 50% owned Akers off of, one game on the weekend and a couple tweets to round out the week. And now all of a sudden it's got to be, this is Akers' game. Could it happen? Absolutely. It's one game showdown. If I knew everything, then I would just win all the money all the time. And that's not what happens. But I'm just bringing up a point of why, how is it automatically switched to this? Also, I don't think that it's just some smash spot for the Rams here. So that's, again, my own take, my own personal views. But in Showdown, I'm liking to go with my core plays and run them out there. And you just get it wrong so often anyway that when I do get it right, I want to make sure I smash and have a lot of ways to the top. That's what I did the other day in the Ravens game. Had a really close call there with 3 or 4 lineups up there. And I'm thinking the same way for this game, where I still like Darrell Henderson. I think the Rams still like Darrell Henderson. I think whether they're up or down, he's involved. I'm not sure about this pass catching role yet for Akers, or if there's going to be any there. And when I see the difference of 50% ownership almost down to 20 over one reaction from last game, I've got a hard time getting all the way there. So, I think I've got around 25 or 30% Akers, nowhere near this 50%. And then on Henderson, I'm over the field around 25%. It looks like we're jumping in here saying he'll be around 20%. I'm not going crazy with it, but I definitely have lineups tonight where I, have Akers in. It doesn't matter if there's 1,000 on the table or if there's 100 on the table, but where I'm just taking Akers and just swapping it to Henderson. And I know folks that did that the other night with Duvernay and Boykin. It was just a similar situation. Duvernay was the cheap guy, but Boykin was right there. We'll get to Bird again in a minute, but you could just swap down. You can run them both if you want. Run the Akers lineup, import, bring it in again, and swap Akers to Henderson. But I'm looking at it more from a game script and then also just what the field's doing here. And I still like Henderson. I still think the Rams like Henderson, and I'm fine with that for $600 less if you look at his overall production on the season. And I think this is an important game still. I don't think this is, week 17, all the buys out of the way, et cetera, and they're just going to run the rookie out there to give him, see what more they've got. They'll still use him, plenty, I think. But I do like the Henderson play there for me, and then sprinkles of Brown in the large field stuff, or if you've got enough lineups to get there.
I've been burned by Akers before, and he's like projected sub 10 or 11% at captain. I'm not going to give away the farm here, but Eric's article was great. And if you have RG Premium, you've read it. If you don't, we're offering a $5 discount on the first month of the RG Core 4 Premium. So I don't want to pass up on that sweet deal we have going on now. Get our great ownership projections, top of the industry, not just for Showdown, but for main slates as well, which is critical in building lineups with leverage and upside. But, devil's advocate here, in my opinion, Cam Akers has been the best running back on the Rams team in terms of effectiveness. And if we're at a critical game of the season, maybe McVay has seen enough to put the best player on the field more, I would hope. I'm just north of Philly here, so I've dealt with the Eagles sports media talk, and trust me, Miles Sanders is not getting the ball. Just, I don't know. We're seeing you would think McVay wouldn't be stubborn in terms of getting his playmakers the ball. I don't know. In my opinion, Akers has been the best back when he's been on the field, and I think last week solidified that. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays off. Don't love his overall ownership is hovering in the high 40% for flex. Don't love that. In large field GPPs, Henderson is about half that. So that's intriguing to me. Good points on Henderson. We'll see how it plays out.
I just think it's more two-way too. Like I said, and the other example, just to round it out, and I'll tie it up with the New England running backs, is that, look, you've got James White and Harris there, both at 33% ownership or something, 33% a piece. But that's, to me, it's not easy to, I don't want to say it's easy to pick, but it's easy to distinguish per lineup, because I'm likely separating them. And I'm going Harris if I think about them being up and running the ball and taking an early lead, and then I can bring it back with Rams guys and sort of run out that game script, use them with Cam to be maybe a little bit unique in some case. I don't think it will be, because Cam's going to be so high owned. I'm just saying the way you got to set it up is something like that. Maybe you use Harris in the captain, who's around 5% projected ownership in captain, versus Newton as the highest projected captain. Whether it's 15 or 20% is yet to be seen. but then you can use Cam Newton in the flex, and that just is a quick flip. It's not going to leverage you massively or anything like that, but it's just a starting point. Right. And what I'm saying by that is at least they're both 33%. I don't love their ownerships, but that's just the ownerships. That's what they are. So you know how you're building around James White as a pass catching back versus Harris as a ground and pound. Let's get this game, keep it on the ground, try and keep this, what can be when Goff is on a more high-powered offense because of Kupp and Woods and rookies like Van Jefferson. You just talked about Akers, all these guys that we're mentioning. So I can see that. But with the other side, it's like 20% versus 50. It's just, for me, easy decision there based on that. So they want to see the wide receiver ownership, though. So let's flip over there. Let's talk about it, because we've got, first off, the Bird conversation to have. Ozark fans, shout out Marty Bird, but this is Damiere Byrd. So we got to talk about him at $800. We've got, the conversation around Myers. Everyone wants to know what Myers ownership is at. And yeah, let's hear your thoughts on it to open it up, and then I'll take over there. But I'm not really fully sold either way here. I can be pushed. What's your thoughts on this $800 Damiere Byrd 25% ownership makes everything fit?
I think you can make solid lineups without him. I don't think you need him. But that being said, I kind of like the play. Regardless, I have a couple of lineups I've been toying with. I have one I have set where that allows me to eat, over $1,200 kind of thing in a lineup that I like with Bird in it. The guy plays 75% of the snaps. Last week's game script was so lopsided. Nobody had numbers in that game. If you're looking, obviously look at Cam, had under 100 yards. It wasn't a long time ago that Bird had his career game. Was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? He had like 10 catches for like $140 or something. So I don't know. It's very possible. Jalen Ramsey's kind of sticking with Jacoby for most of the game. I mean, Cam's obviously not going to throw his way a ton. If that's the case, I think Bird is viable. I can't believe he's that cheap. I don't think he should be 800. I don't think you need him to make an optimal lineup, but it intrigues me and is kind of a way to leave some money on the table, because I think he should be at least, a $2,500, maybe a $3,000 player on this slate, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's where the struggle is, right? The $800 price tag, because, like I see people mention in the chat, like Cam trusts him. The whole point of the Bird thing was the old school connection, the Carolina Panthers connection. But like, it's just the price is 800, so it makes it tougher. But like, this guy can have a 9-target game and get you 11 fantasy points, an 8-target game and get you 6 fantasy points. So at some point, there's a difference between opportunity and execution, and that's where I have a challenge with this guy. And like you said, there is other guys, right? You've got other options there. I'm not saying these are great plays, but N'Keal Harry is there, Jacoby Myers is there. They just activated for $200 Devin Asai, where they've got their Izzo was on the IR now. I believe I just saw. So it's going to be their other guy there. So you've got that, and then you've got James White, who we just talked about, and then the fact that they just want to run the ball, and Cam himself will run the ball in as well. So it's all how you want to pair it up. But I can see why at $800. I'll probably have somewhere around the field level. It's not something that I'm just like lock and load. I think in cash games, I get it. So plug them in. It makes everything fit. You can get both quarterbacks. You can get the running backs like Akers that you think are the guys, and whoever you want to fit in, go for it. But in large field stuff, I don't think it's crazy. It's no different than when I play PGA DFS or, any other sport where you've got these super low priced, high cost, high ownership value plays. It's not, they don't fail because they're high owned on DraftKings.com. That's just not the facts, but it does seem like more often than not you see it. And like I said, at the end of the day, this is a guy that you definitely could fail here, right? They've got Moncrief there now as well. They got rid of Isaiah Ford. They've got Moncrief there. N'Keal Harry's a little bit more expensive. The tight end that I just mentioned, Jacoby Myers, who's almost the same ownership. I know he costs more, but it's not like the salary is an issue here on this slate. There's a lot of other guys you can use. And I like a guy when we move over to the Rams for cheaper, and that's Van Jefferson for 2.6K, who's not showing it. I think his ownership is light here on Lineup HQ. He's showing around 5%. But I definitely think that even if he was 10 or 12, I'd rather find that money to move up to him than I would play, almost a 30% owned Damiere Byrd, because again, once you get Byrd in there, you've got Cam Newton in there. Once you get those guys in there, you've got enough money to get your Woods and your Kupp in there. Like, where are you getting different in that lineup Or are we just going to have another, again, I'm not going to frown at $7,000, but when it's 120-way chop or whatever it is the other night, I want the lineup that's a 10-way or a 3-way or something like that. I'm not, trying to build in that sense. It's, someone just said, let's be honest, 1-game slates are a crapshoot. Yeah, they are. You can pray it out and, like you said, get after it. But at least with that one lineup, it always comes back to this a little bit of strategy or game theory or just thought process in general. So many DFS players, I know the talk is always with the Millie Maker on Sunday. And they say, he just throws one in the $20, but it's fun money. I get that. But why wouldn't you want to put your fun money to work to still try and win the tournament? So when you're just throwing in your cash lineup with that $20 and saying, well, hopefully it hits, that's not ideal. But if you're just throwing it as fun money, build it to lose it. A lot of us have spent $20 at the movie theater before COVID-19 and seen a shitty movie. You put the money in, it was for entertainment, and it burned you. It was a terrible movie. That's the same thing. Put your money in to try and win. So when you're putting your money in a tournament like this on the single 1-game crapshoot, take some chances, fade some of these high ownership plays. Other stuff can happen and will in these games. You talked about 5 or 6 scenarios at the top of the show that we saw over last week. So, for me, that's my take on Bird. I'll have some. I'm not trying to lock him in or anything like that. To each their own. I could see why you would with the price, but he hasn't shown me the execution on the opportunity besides one. You talked about his career game. I think that might have been the only game in his career, not just his career game, the only game in his career that he's done something like that, at least recently, man. So, do your thing. I get it, but I don't think I need that to make these lineups work and make them fit. And if it happens and burns me, we move on to the next slate.
I agree. I don't think you need him. I don't mind him. I don't mind the play. I think you can get different ones. For me, it's more of having a unique lineup with him, I think, than plugging him in and like jamming in Goff and Cam. I don't think and whoever Damian Harris with Cam. I don't know if that's the way you want to go. I don't think that's a necessity for me, but I do think he could help make some unique lineups, and he doesn't have to do a hell of a lot. That's the thing, Tambo. He doesn't have to do a hell of a lot either. But what do you think of Van Jefferson and his snap count last game? Was that an outlier? I think it's the second game of the year where he's only seen above 40% of the snaps. So was that just an outlier game? I mean, Josh Reynolds, contract year. I don't know. You know what I mean? But Reynolds has been pretty good. He's been effective this year. He's been like very underrated as a contributor to this Rams team. So do you expect Jefferson to get a decent amount of snaps tonight?
I do. This is one for me again, where I'll just take the chance because it's kind of a, back to my Akers thing. Some could say, well, didn't you just say that was an overreaction to some tweets and last week and one result and whatever? But this is a little bit different again, too, where twofold. I'll give you 2 reasons. One, the ownership is completely different. He's not 50% owned like Akers. He's a wide receiver on a team that throws the ball a lot. If you look at Goff's pass attempts, there's plenty there. If New England somehow gets up in the game, there should be the same or even more pass attempts. The ownership, even if it's wrong at 5, is likely 15, 12? Like it's not going to be 40 or 50. So there's that. And then you're on the same team as a spot where we've got the 2 wide receivers at the top, almost 70% owned. So run your Woods and Van Jefferson or run your Kupp and Van Jefferson and roll it off that. That's what I'm saying, right? So to me, that's where I do think it's a different scenario than just saying, well, it's a 1-game sample size of snap share. Okay, yes, but like I said, at the same reason, there's what I gave just 3 or 4 other reasons why it's really not the same to me. And like I said, in an offense like this, where they're going to be passing a lot, there is the opportunity for him to still be the guy that has the play. Not to mention, add one more piece. He's a little bit more than Damiere Byrd, but he's like 1/5 of the ownership. So that's another scenario again where if you can afford him, why not take the chance on that, right? I think that he's not going to be that high owned, and so it's not going to bother me as much to have him in there. And I think he's also another way to get unique. We'll talk about more ways after. The tight ends are very interesting on this team as well. I think that's one thing people forget, the 12 personnel thing where, that's why you see Kupp come off or have these certain games where you don't see him get there or have the games that you expect is because he's getting subbed out on plays, right? And they're running Higbee and Everett out there at the same time. So it affects all of them. But again, the price reflects that. Someone asked, do you think that DK made a mistake on the price for Bird? Like literally made a mistake and he was supposed to be 8,000 or something. I don't know, but I don't see it because that would have made him more expensive than Myers. It would have made him up in Cam Akers' zone, as a running back that everyone is assuming starting and good to go and going to crush it here. So yeah, I don't think it was a misclick of a 0 or anything like that. I just think it's part of it. So goes with that.
I wonder what his props are. I didn't pull open the sports book today yet, but I'm sure if they're even on there, they're probably very low. But I'm just curious. But a couple of numbers that stuck with me, and one of our many great tools at RG is Gridiron IQ, where you can really check out some matchups, some good advanced metrics here. New England is fifth worst defensively in terms of passing plays that are successful against them. And they are fifth worst in yielding rushing successful plays. Successful rushing plays. There it is. So I know the defense seems stingy. Maybe the corners are better than everyone thought they'd be. But in terms, this helps your argument for the over. They can be exploited. Just I just have the DK Metcalf dusting Gilmore earlier this year is just engraved in my brain. I don't know why. But it is. So I think New England can be scored upon. You're right. I mean, Goff is throwing the ball more this year probably than many people anticipated. The Rams are sixth in the league in passing yards on offense, and they rank third in successful pass play percentage. So, kudos to not only Goff, but McVay and the scheme. But the Rams just being number one in rushing success, I just can't get that. I can't get over that. I just that really sways me to play some running back captain teams. I know we've discussed in this whole year, wide receivers are typically the way to get rational leverage, right? Getting that wide receiver one, and I get it. And who's going to be the wide receiver one today for the Rams? Is it going to be Cooper Kupp or Robert Woods? It's just a title, right? So that's hard. That's hard to figure out. I mean, do you have can you logically figure out? And people say, well, Bill Belichick takes away the other team's best weapon. Who's their best weapon? Is it Kupp? Is it Woods? I don't know. Is the defense even good enough to take that away? Can they do that schematically? I don't think so this year. But I think New England can be exploited a little bit here. And I know you want to talk tight ends, so here it is. Higbee coming in around 20%. And Gerald Everett, who has been just as much or maybe more involved on some weeks than Higbee, is half of his ownership. So that's what strikes me first. I almost prefer Everett at this point. Higbee had that 3-touchdown game earlier this year. And
yeah, that's where the conversation is going to be. Is that Higbee scores the touchdowns, right? And that's what it's going to be.
But does he? Or did it just happen once?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what happens, right? So yeah, I think so. I'm with you on Everett, though. That again, just looking for the savings, using another guy down here that you could go to. It's what is he here? I think he's 3,400. I was gonna say 2,400. Yeah, 3,400. And then this is another scenario where you can see this again. Matt Gay has been announced active, right? That was sort of the question all day: is who's their kicker going to be? He's good to go, 3,800. I think a lot of people like that, and and want to put a kicker if they think it's going to be the under that they're expecting. And this could definitely be a spot where you see a guy like Everett for $400 less just catch 5 passes for 60 yards or something and just crush it. And then they don't have a bunch of their kicker involved. It's just a tiny example in one quick pivot down in that range. Real quick though, back to your point, that's one thing we didn't talk about. I know people are out there building their lineups for different game scripts, and that's what we're trying to talk about here and give some ideas. But I think Belichick taking away the number one, as truthful as that is, of course, we all know this. This has been going on for years. I feel like if that's where I was trying to get at earlier, where I just think he's instead of taking away a number one option on this team, what does he do? He takes away what their number one idea is or their number one plan is. What do the Rams want to do? The Rams want to run, right? And what is probably their worst option is passing with Goff. We've seen some good games, but not very many. So why doesn't he just stack it up and get after this? And that's why, even though there's ownership associated with these pass catchers, I'm focused on lineups for passing, for the over, for, not even if the game doesn't go over, the idea is more fantasy points through the air when everyone is so focused on the ground because everyone's expecting under, everyone's loving this Akers, then they've got James White figured out on the other side as the bring back because he's going to catch the passes. I get all that. I'm just saying I'm thinking about what they're going to try and do and why would they not make Goff throw the ball? That's just better off, in my opinion, than letting them do what they want, right? They want to get the ball. They want to pick it. They want to let their guys do their job out there. So I don't know. That's just how I see it. Again, how I'm building. Davis says, 10,000 though on FanDuel for Bird. Yeah, I think in my opinion, FanDuel made the mistake. So, that's what I would tell you. If you look at it, it's 2.5 is his over under for receptions, 33 yards is his over under for yards. Again, if he beats both of those just on the number, we get 5 or 6 fantasy points. So that's, for $800, whatever. But I'm just saying if it's not enough, that to me is, like I said, that's why it makes sense in cash, because it's like he doesn't have to do much, but he also might get 2 targets and not catch either of them. Or we've seen him have 8 target games with 6 points. So it can easily burn you. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that's why. Goff gets rattled under pressure. Absolutely he does. But that's sort of the whole point. If they get after him and do that, they can double down by going after this, making them throw the ball, doing their best job at that. Then what are you doing? You have Goff getting rattled under pressure, sacks, scoop and scores, fumbles. The Pats D works here by all means when most are probably on the Rams side. Second of all, you got him thrown into guys like Gilmore. Okay, well, there you go. There's that as well. So we mentioned Harry a little bit. Someone mentioned N'Keal Harry. Yeah, he's the guy that's down there that if you don't want to play, that's basically what we're pitching towards here, or at least I am, of if you don't want to use $800 Bird, you've got a guy like N'Keal Harry who, again, you're not going to go in the game log and get excited. It's just the idea of look at the ownership gap. It's a guy that can catch passes for the Pats. They don't have that many. They've got enough, but it's a guy that you can use down there for $1,000 more, and you have the salary. So there's ways to get unique down there and run it out. That's just my thoughts on that. Going back to what you were saying, Luch, I think, it's just, again, comes down to how you're building, but we can go into it a little bit more. Guys are talking about 5-1 Rams. I know Eric's article was looking at it. I think 3-3 is definitely in play here, right? From what he was saying.
Yeah. 3-3, 4-2. I mean, it's very tempting to go. For me, it's tempting to go 5-1, but it's just typically not the way to go. N'Keal Harry, I mean, he's consistently played on average 55+% of his snaps when he's healthy, even more in the beginning of the year. So that's an interesting way to go. I mean, everybody's going Bird, seeing the price tag, bump it up to Harry. Harry has just as good of odds, in my opinion, to put up a respectable number than Bird does. And he's just because of his price tag's a little higher, no one's talking about him. And that's fine. That's fine. And neither option makes me feel good. Like I don't love it. I'm not excited. I'm not gonna get off the show and be like, boom, let's go N'Keal Harry. Can't wait for 3 touchdowns, Like I don't feel good about it. But I think it's an interesting pivot you could call it, at that position. What did you ask me? I can't remember. I'm looking at like 5 screens here.
No, we'll go back and we'll keep going. I guess, I'm just trying to stay focused on the chat to keep involvement with everybody asking, 2 quarterbacks in 50-50s, I think for sure you can definitely fit it. The best chance at production is there. If it doesn't work out, so be it. But that's been the sort of the nuts for, the last couple of years if you're doing it. And then, yeah, Eric, you mentioned this. I like this one, actually. We didn't spend enough time on it. So again, Moncrief, I didn't drop his name, but just sort of saying like he's right there for $200 less than Bird. He got no targets last week, but here's another point, and people aren't thinking about this one. You mentioned a little earlier, Luch, but with the blowout brought a couple things. Guys like Gunner down there, he got a late pass that was from Stidham, right? That they brought him in because the game was over. That's why he was even in the game. So guys like him and Michelle are more related to something like that, where you're not going to expect to see it again. Could it happen? Sure, but again, not something I'm going to go crazy to get after it. I do like the Moncrief thing though, because that's the other thing. I think if you look at it, back to my point on pass game here, whether the Patriots are up or down, it could be through the pass game, right? There could be a situation where they're going to go away from a guy like Ramsey and pass to these Harrys or Moncriefs or that. The reason Birds, sure. It's just not what I see happening. But yeah, the Moncrief stuff, the Harry stuff, I'm way more likely, and I've got them in my lineups for sure as sprinkles, as at most one. Again, you could set it up in your groups in Lineup HQ. Right. If you guys have access, you can go in there, set up at most one. But I do like that call, Eric. I think it's an option there you can use. It's, of course, the natural slate breaker at $200 less than Bird at, what is it going to be, 1/25th of the ownership? If we got 25% on Bird, see a 1% Moncrief. I don't know if that low, but call it 1/10 and we'll get away with that, I think. So I could see it. I just, like I said, even if the Rams go up or down, I think the Patriots will still move the ball through the air a little bit. And again, these guys at these prices, it's those short passes or those one-off touchdowns when everyone's focused on somebody else in the end zone. Then maybe it is a guy like Moncrief who gets a quick pass from Newton there and catches the ball. And that's huge at a $600 price tag at a 1/10 leverage point over the guy that everybody's on Bird, and then they're done for the night, right? Unless Bird does something big later on, those lineups are likely all in a lot of trouble. So definitely like that. Keep going here, Justin. Anything else you've got? I'll try and keep looking through the chat.
For me, and I opened the show saying how crazy it's been and tough to predict, and it is. Should have been a meteorologist. Couldn't you get me wrong more? No offense, Kevin Roth. Kevin Roth does great work. And some more great content we have at Rotogrinders is when it gets messy in December and you want to know what are we looking at wind gust wise? Is there going to be precipitation? Kevin Roth does a fantastic job for us. On his updates. Big plug for Kevin. Here's my thing, and I think it's going to be a grind. And I wonder if people are going to see the 45 points from New England or think that, like, I just don't know, like, where they're getting. This is my personal script is how the hell are they going to move the ball tonight? I just don't know if they're really going to be able to. Like, that's my prediction, right? So I'm looking at the Rams D at 13.5%. I know they scored touchdowns in back-to-back games. It's not sustainable. The odds of them scoring another one is not good, right? It just doesn't happen that often. But pretty active pass rush. I know Cam, can move around the pocket and things like that. But I do think there's a high chance for a couple of turnovers tonight. Our common theme is we pretty much established New England's receivers aren't very good. Don't have any tight ends. They're going to have to run the ball. So if the Rams kind of funnel the run a little bit, if they're able to contain Harris and keep Cam, who's been dinged up all week, right? He's been had this abdomen thing that keeps popping up, and maybe he doesn't run 15 times. Then I like the odds of Cam Newton throwing the ball to a bunch of scrubs and taking my chances with this Ram defense. So Aaron Donald's still on the other side there to make him even more uncomfortable. So I thought the Rams defense would be projected a little higher than 13.5%. Personally, I don't know if last week's recency bias with the Patriots putting up over 40 is maybe why they're a little low. I don't know. So I'm not huge on playing defenses frequently, but I do like the Rams defense tonight, especially coming in at 13%.
Yeah, so I talked at the top about doing a lot more, studying, just focusing on these showdown tournaments, trying to get better at them, just working away, always grinding, right? And one of the things I did notice, and one of the things that I saw in a lot of the winning lineups, and just long term, if you look at now, we've got a bit of a sample size to be able to see how these things are won. Is one defense is used actually quite often in these winning lineups. Now, I don't know, again, right now tonight, what do we got them? 11 and 15, like they're, 12 and 16, call it. They're right there. But I do like having it, maximum of one per lineup. And I do like getting, shares of both. So I'm actually slightly overweight on both, but, if you look at the numbers, I'm actually slightly underweight on the Rams. I just looked, I've got 13% of the Rams defense. I've got 20% of the Patriots defense. Again, sticking to my story here, it may or may, it's like you said earlier, the guy said, a crapshoot, you pray a little bit. The thing is about me is I do still like the defense. I talked about it plenty so far on the show, is about, them getting after it. And just Goff can make so many mistakes that, again, I can see a scoop and score. I can see pick six. I can see all these things happening where everyone is just expecting the Rams to come out here and smash. But now we've got Goff putting up 400 yards and 3 TDs. Arizona Brian's car camping adventures is a god, and that's his prediction. But I don't know, man. I still think the Pats D is better than people think. We saw it just last week. I mean, Herbert has been on fire. It was the same Cam Newton. It was the same rest of these quote-unquote scrubs that everyone wanted to say is trash. And I know the Rams are much better than the Chargers. Don't get me wrong here. What I'm trying to say is if they want to execute a plan and put their mind to it, they can. And Belichick can get after them. I think, the interesting point is, someone mentioned it earlier, McVay, this guy must have been hurt for months after that. He just got dominated. The hashtag fake sharp tags were out there, the tweets, everything on this guy. Like, he got destroyed by Belichick. And I know it was a totally different team, offense, etc. But at the end of the day, McVay is still going to want to get back for that. I've got the Patriots I like them tonight so much that, like I said, I'm just going that side of the game, right? You can, look at it however you want to look at it. It's a 4.5 point spread. It's not like this is a 14.5 point spread, right? There's definite ways they can get there. We've seen Goff look like he's supposed to have huge games and then come out and just absolutely tank. So build accordingly. I've got lineups both ways, but my majority and my focus, I've already talked about a lot of my exposures and where I'm at are on building for the Patriots, getting this game done, winning it, or this game being closer than what people think between this Rams team that's supposedly just going to go out and smash them.
I think it'll be close, fairly close enough, close enough that I'm going to try really hard to not final any 5-1 builds. I mean, I'm sure it's very tempting if you like one way or the other, but I'm more 4-2, 3-3 is my goal. But
yeah.
Any other questions from the chat, Tambo? What's going on? Did we do a decent job answering some of them?
I think, yeah, you guys could throw in more if you want. I mean, I personally love that stuff. It keeps it interactive. Like you said, we can go in circles and just talk about it.
Right.
The blender conversation is always great. Play whoever you want. I think it's factual on this slate, especially on Showdown in general. But, Edgar says Belichick eats rookie quarterbacks. I agree. I don't know that Goff is that much better than rookie quarterbacks. So that's really the problem here. So definitely is. But I mean, at the end of the day, talk about collecting cards. I'm always wanting to get a little card dig in there and chat about it. If I'm collecting rookie cards right now, I'm buying Justin Herbert's, whether he had that game or not before, or trying to score them before I'm getting out there looking for Goff rookie cards. I can tell you that much. So, long-term, I think he's going to be just fine. It's what Belichick does, but I think Belichick does, what he likes. His execution has been there more than it hasn't, if you want to put it that way. And I don't think it so much matters as, can he do, if he has better personnel, absolutely it helps, but there is certain opportunities and things like this. I think this is just such a prime slate for it. You can leave a bunch of money on the table. You can separate the, the Cup and the Woods plays, you can do all of this stuff. You know what, Eric's asking about who's your most owned captain. You go ahead, Luch. I'm going to try and figure it out because that's the challenge, right? Even with the Rotogrinders plugin, I don't think I can see who's my most owned beyond just what I kind of know. And like I said, I've got a lot of guys at captain, but if you look here, Newton, Myers, Harris, White, basically, again, all Patriots. Pat's D, I'm loaded up on Patriots. Stephen Jones, no surprise in actives. The only one, if you were, late or early, depending on when you came in, but Izzo, I know some people were talking about using the Pats tight end. Someone asked earlier about Pats tight ends, Devin for $200, his last name Asai, whatever. And then you got Dalton Keene is a little bit more. I got a couple shares of him. He got a pass last week. Again, blowout, so I don't think it matters, but I'm sprinkling him in those lineups. For the Pats, for the Rams side, somebody just asked, I've got more Woods and Henderson. And we didn't talk enough about it earlier, probably, Luch. Do you have a preference on Cup and Woods? You mentioned a little bit about asking me, and I don't think I answered it, but who do you like over Cup and Woods if you had to pick one?
Man, that's a horrible question to try to answer from week to week. I lean Cup slightly. I think I like the slot matchup a little bit more. It's just a matter of Goff getting the ball there, right? I mean, we've seen Cup and smash spots. It's usually when I play him, and then, the ball just doesn't go there. But I lean Cup. Although you look at Bobby Tree's target shares the last couple weeks has been unbelievable. He's getting killer volume. So it's really a tough call. Both have similar upside. In a game where I think it could be more plotting up and down the field, maybe some more methodical drives, I do like the idea of playing Cup a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely like them both. Like I said, I like them both, but I like them separated. I'll just try and see here what I've got, if I've got it numbered. My thoughts are one thing and my ownership might be another. It's so close, right? They're both within 5%. I guess my point was going to be is based on how I'm building most of my lineups. I like Cup because I think of Cup as a security blanket. I love Woods. I've talked about this on, main slate shows over the last 2-3 weeks when he was going off. The reason I like Woods is because a lot of people just see the targets for Cup and then say, well, it's got to be Cup. He gets all the targets. It's like I said, it's what it is typically Goff runs into trouble, goes to guys like Cup with a security blanket. What I don't like about Cup is, and I've said this over these past shows, is that there's guys like Higbee back, right? Those will affect it, that, how they run their 12 personnel. You've got also situations like Woods will get like end arounds in the red zone where he rushes it in. He gets rushing attempts, things like that. So tonight I like Kupp a little bit more. I don't love both defenses. I think it's obviously possible on an island game on Showdown, but it's just not how I build my lineups. It's the worst anti-sweat late in the game when you're waiting on, you're hoping both of these defenses hold up, and you've got something else in that range, like a guy like Everett, who just does his thing on the last catch of the game or a couple catches and takes you out completely, or catches a touchdown third quarter, and that lineup's dead now. So what else do we got here? The Rams' third tight end. Bird is a lock.
Johnny, was it Johnny M? He had a career game against Chicago like a month ago and kind of went MIA. He's on a milk carton anymore. I don't even know what kind of snaps he's playing.
Yeah. Not someone, again, could you get there? Sure, but we've got Everett and just so many guys already. I don't even think Reynolds has enough ownership. Van Jefferson doesn't have enough ownership. Like, it's not like, obviously, if that's the guy that gets there and you got 100 lineups, then yeah, get him into some because you'll want to figure it out from there. But, for me, I'm looking at the other side. Someone else asked this one, I think is a more important one. I've got Myers over White. And again, they both have a little bit of ownership, but I like passing it through the air more than the checkdowns. I think everyone just automatically assumes Aaron Donald, the pressure, Cam, check down, boom, automatic. I like James White, but I definitely like Myers more. I also think the opportunity for something like the 100-yard bonus or something like that is definitely more in play for a guy like Myers. So if I look at my ownership between those two guys, I've got about 15% more Myers than White. I won't put exact numbers, but I'd roll that. Yeah, Eric, someone asked this today in the actual article. I think you hit on it a little bit, Luch, about the Slate IQ likes the leverage play is on wide receiver twos. But like it says, even in the notes at the final, at the bottom, technically it's supposed to be by price. So that would be Woods because 9,200 versus Kupp 9,600, just using flex pricing. But it is subjective. So to me, I don't really think there's a right and wrong answer to that, as much as kind of how, it doesn't love quarterbacks, for example. So, don't go crazy with Cam Newton, but I really don't think that Newton is your prototypical quarterback right now. He's got, more rushing touchdowns than most running backs in the league. And I just think that's the game plan, right? That they're going to go after. So he's got the double upside of being able to do that. So, and then, I've got some lineups with both quarterbacks in the same, Eric. It hasn't been, back to my research, ideal, right? Typically it's one quarterback that you're using, and we've even seen lineups where you've got a guy like Cam Newton in the flex and then Kupp, who's expensive, especially in the captain slot, in the captain slot by himself with no Kupp. But I just, right, again, with all the money you've got to spend, in some lineups, I'm doing that for sure because I've seen it work. I know it's different. I know it's unique. I'm getting after that, but I'm just saying in general, I think a lot of the times, you're going to see it on a slate like this where it does still end up that way because there's just, there's only so many ways you can go. And when you're trying to put too many of these random pivots down there, I'm not going to be as focused on it. So, I'm only going to put one or two of them max in a lineup together.
Good point. Hey, it's top of the hour here. Just a reminder, RG Core 4 Premium, $5 off your first month. Bang for your buck. Bang for your buck. Hey, NBA season's here too. I mean, we're in full swing. Tambo, anything else before we get out of here, my man?
No, appreciate you guys always. The support is great. Keep asking those questions. We'll always try and get through them as you guys are on here. The season's winding down, man. We got to make it right. I'm looking to do it tonight. I wish everyone the best of luck. Hope everyone has a good slate.
Yeah, good luck, everyone. And in your annual league playoffs, if you made it, if not, there's a million DFS single game showdowns and slates to play and a ton of sports. Tambo, where can the people find you out on Twitter?
Twitter at Totag and Tambo. Hit me up there, guys, anytime. Other than that, on all these shows daily. Like I said, just, golf is on a little bit of a break, but I'll be looking to come back as, much as I can for as much content as I can. Excited to see your stuff with NBA as well, Luch.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to myself. Check me out on Twitter at the J Carlucci. DMs are open. Shoot me some questions. I'll do the best I can to point you in the right direction. And Tambo always has a jam-packed content schedule. So looking forward to doing another PGA Lineup HQ show when the time rolls around. Until then, we'll be on here for Thursday Night Showdown. So for Toe Tag and Tambo, producer Devin, and the rest of the Rotogrinders crew. I'm Justin Carlucci. Have a great night and good luck, everyone.